Gundam.tk presents Full Armor Unicorn Gundam. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2Rs2B's Gundam.tk, which is GundamReviews.net. I'm continuing my look at all of the massive amount of weapons that you're going to get from these plates for the Full Armor Unicorn Gundam, so let's continue before moving on to the MS. But really, beam sabers cannot compare to the Hyper Beam Javelin, which when folded up looks very unassuming. But as you can see, when it's stretched out, it's just a monster in terms of size, not to mention the effect parts and the clear parts that you can reveal. When you're putting it together, you're going to have this very cheesy handle down here. You basically build this part, and then you build this part, and then just put them onto this bending point here, and then you're going to have a hand drill, which is just going to stick in there. It's important that this can pop out because you can reassemble it in different places, but if you actually want to start deploying it, you would flip this part out there. You can see that this will come down. You can also flip this part out here, and when you do that, this thing is going to get in the way. You got to be careful with this part, I noticed. But anyway, you can bend this down and lock it into place down here at varying lengths as this is going to stretch out. And if you click this down together, you're starting to have something that is still going to look like a household tool. And this thing, despite looking really flimsy, it's sort of good because it's just going to have a lot of play variations. If you want to open it, you can pop this drill out. You can then open it up this way. And then if you do that, you can reattach the drill down here, which is going to give you the long version with the blade at the top and bottom. But the real bonus, and something that I didn't notice until I actually looked at the kit when I opened up the box, is that you can split these white parts apart there on the top and bottom, and both of them are going to reveal green psycho frame, which looked so good when it was on that X plate. But in addition to that clear green, these huge clear pink parts there, which actually have all these little lines over there just to give them sort of a textured feel. And you can just see the amount of planning that Bandai put into everything. When you open this up, this part here is not going to bump into this one. In fact, it's actually going to help it stay in place because it's just got a slit there, so that when this is going to sit in its natural form, it's going to stay in there nice and securely. And you can see that if this is on the forearm under one of those shields / magnum / Gatling guns, this is going to be a very impressive close-range melee weapon. With it fully extended, you can also put this part down at the bottom and this part here at the top. Just be careful you don't dislodge this gray part as you're doing it. And with this all the way back, you can just see the size difference here between the half one and the full one in terms of length. And if I put this right beside the foot of the Master Grade 007 sword, this is an idea of the height of this weapon. But since that's a little bit ridiculous, what you can do is actually detach this part from the bottom and bring it up to the top over here where you can plug it into this gray axe looking part. And again, you get that same benefit of it locking into place here. And it's still going to be almost the same in terms of height. It just seems a little bit more practical to have both of the blades at the top end. My only complaint really would be though is that this thing just looks way too skinny compared to the size of the weapons. And I'm hoping that I guess if the Gundam just has enough bulk behind it that you're not going to notice it so much. The fact that they've got this much detail and bending parts certainly adds to it. It's not just a long dull pole. But anyway, it just seems a little bit lacking for a weapon that is this cool at the business end. And if you detach the triangular part here, you can clip it on very easily to the beam magnum and then put it in here just for the ultimate bayonet. And then just imagine with a beam magnum in hand that you've got the two Gatling guns on here, attached with the javelin in between that and the shield. You actually need the forearm to really kick all this off by attaching onto the beam Gatling gun, but that is probably the most loaded forearm you're ever going to see on a Gundam. The boosters I'd assume would just be problematic in terms of keeping this thing in aerial poses or things like that, but anyway, they were actually more fun to put together than I expected. You've got this big part here at the end with lots of little lining opportunities there, and these are just two large white parts which just snap together. Again, I went with the gray lining there, but it's back on this end where you're actually going to have some fun parts here. You put on a white part which is going to attach on, and that's going to actually come into play when you're attaching it to the base jabber. And then you're going to have some gray parts in there, and look at this, gray, red, and gray, all provided just by a few parts actually. Just the red part which is going to split it in between, but just this much detail on the back actually makes you want to see this part, instead of just thinking of it as something that's going to be in the way. And no matter how you attach it on, you're going to need these two gray parts here which attach together, and they snap into place. Just remember that you have to pop them up if you want to take this off. The lawn furniture looks better than I expected, and you've got these gray parts here which are just going to snap onto either side, make sure you do it right. There's a long and a short end to each of these. And when you've got the parts, if you actually had this attached to the Gundam, you would put them in here at the back, and they do seem to click into place ever so slightly, although it doesn't really seem like it's going to stay on there at all with any confidence. And to the base jabber, which was actually more fun than I expected to put together here, you've got some cool gray landing gear down there, and that's actually enough, if you can see here, just to keep this part by itself in place. Great parts here at the back. This is where you're going to attach on the knee holders here. It's up at the front that you've got 2 pilots, which is really cool, and a very nice looking cockpit. And if you want to ignore the fact that that's wide open and that they'd all die in space, anyway, it's still pretty cool, and you don't really need a clear part because it's going to look good even without it. Here are the parts that the knees are going to fit into, and they are going to have a bending part here, and there's 3 different positions down there, so you can choose any of the 3 when you're actually attaching it on. It's just a little bit hard to take those on and off, so something I'd imagine you don't want to do too often. On the back you have a tow holder, which is going to look incredibly complex thanks to these gray pieces, which just have a whole bunch of great details built into them. Despite the fact that this whole thing is made out of very few parts, you're just going to attach it onto the back like this. And then onto the front part here, which is going to be the hand grip, which is just a big solid white piece there in the middle. White part there in the front, the same type of ski landing gear there. The only thing you have to be aware of is that these parts, which attach onto the boosters, are going to go in here as well, and you're going to have to do this in the right order. So when you plug them in, you actually put it in at a 45-degree angle. They've got a nice part for that. And then you're going to put in this gray part here, which is going to provide the hand grips. And when you slide this into the front of the actual flying part, it's actually not going to look all that bad, especially when you add in the boosters. The back part looks nice and detailed, as do those parts for the knees. You're just going to have to be careful that you can take those gray parts in and out, but the fact that they've got those gray details there in the front, I think this looks sharp even without its best feature added. Which you do by taking the booster and then just plugging it into either side here at the front. That's going to get you a nice click. And on the back here, if you just detach this thruster part, you'll notice that there's a slit here. Make sure that you put this lined up left to right, and then when you plug that into there, things are going to start to lock into place. And if you do line things up incorrectly, you can actually just pop out this part because it's got an octagon down there. So line everything up so that you're actually going to have the right part in line with the attachment point. When it's all completed, I have to say that it looks pretty sharp, and you can see it here from the top, the side, the front, and then your 45. It's going to have no problem sitting flat, as you could see, even with just the middle part with the landing gear there. These bonus ones here up at the front are just going to help it keep its balance, I'm sure, even with an MS in it. But if you pop out these parts from the lawn furniture here, you can actually elevate it, and even though they don't actually clip into place or anything and it doesn't feel that secure, the fact that they've got flat feet down there is going to keep them in place. So what do you think of the base jumper? I think it's a fantastic addition and something that we didn't expect, and all Bandai really had to do was give you enough plastic there for the middle, considering that these boosters we already knew about before. If you're not careful though, it will collapse like a bad lawn chair. As you can see from all those empty plates here, it already feels like I built a master grade, but the most important part is still to come. So stay tuned everybody as I put together the mobile suit and show you all the parts and everything you need to see before we put all of these on there and see how it's going to work as either the brickiest or the best looking arm monster Gundam has ever seen. Anyway everybody, Robert184 Gundam.tk, thanks for watching, see you next time everybody, bye. Who needs it? I can destroy a Gaffran now.